So this is my house, and what I'd like to do in this video is talk about how overall the plan that we're implementing for our yard is a lot of ornamental plants, but also a lot of food and high value plants, and no lawn. And so I just want to go on a tour because I think that it's a good time for a lot of folks right now to maybe think about doing something practical and productive like this. So this is about 9 months old from nothing at all. And so what we're looking at, I'm just going to go on a property tour here and show some of the stuff we have planted. And so the first thing I'll show here is this is arrowroot. And arrowroot is in the ginger family. It produces a very beautiful plant. This is just coming out of dormancy, but it's also an edible plant. So it serves a lot of different functions. Along the left here are some tea. These were just put in. They're cuttings, so they look terrible right now, but in a few months they're going to look fantastic. Along the back edge, that's a tomato plant we just passed. And then this is Swiss chard. And so there was some hibiscus in here, and there will be something else ornamental. I've just pulled some of those out because they weren't doing so great, and I didn't like the way they looked. But this is a basil, and this is a plant that gave us a ton of value. At this point, we've left it to go to flower and to go to seed, and the bees are enjoying it quite a bit, and the other pollinators. We get a lot of butterflies, a lot of bees. Don't bother us, but they're nice to look at. And so with this, leaving it, and now it's going to seed. And so we've been collecting the seeds now for next year's basil. And then right here is another basil, a little bit closer, a little bit less far along, but tons of production from that. So this is kind of a back view to show everything that's going on. Still pretty early in the growing process here. A lot of stuff is just starting to take off. So this back corner area is sort of the nursery area. It's got all of the potted plants and the stuff where it's not quite ready to go in the ground yet, but will be soon enough. So there's a bunch of ginger, ornamental and edible, and then a bunch of fig trees and a bunch of palm. That's the bulk of it, but there's also some other vegetables that are just waiting to go somewhere. These are all fig cuttings from other figs, and figs deserve and will get some other videos. I've recorded a lot of stuff, and I plan to do some other fig videos soon. But back on this back wall, we've got kale. Have harvested a lot from the kale here. It's provided a ton of meals, and it's really just a couple of plants here and there. And then this monstrosity is a tomato from the University of Hawaii plant program, propagation program. So it's designed to grow well in Hawaii. And this plant, obviously, it's not staked up. I just let it grow, and it's gone mad and has produced an absolute ton of tomatoes with no care at all, planted straight in composted wood chips, basically. Fertilized a little bit with some organic fertilizer, but just reach in there and pull out tomatoes. Typically, if we want to make a salsa or tomato sauce, just go out with a basket and pull out a bunch of tomatoes. Then along this back wall, those are all crotons, just a beautiful ornamental. Then here is some lavender. The lavender has gone crazy. Another tea. So we're just going along. What you can see is that there's a lot of ornamentals, a lot of flowering plants, but then quite a lot of edible plants as well. So it's a nice mix. It's not just all ornamental or all edible. It's really a lot of stuff that we love. That's very aesthetically pleasing, along with stuff that's useful. So this is a perfect example. So right here along this border, there are two on either side. On the right and left side, there are two philodendron species, and in the middle is a collard green. And so these collards, I think they're southern Georgia collards. And so this is just starting to produce. Pulled a harvest from it yesterday, just pulled out the lower leaves. Cooked it up in a stir fry, and now this plant is starting to go crazy. So just just a really easy way to give you some edible plants in the landscape. Right there is this is a tomato plant, but the plant just before was a fig plant. This tomato is just starting to produce, and I'm going to do a video on this tomato in general, just to show some propagation tricks that I've learned that are really, really useful to make one plant go a long way. But this now is a fig, and this is a 1-year-old cutting. Took it off of another plant, and this is already producing fruit from a 1-year cutting. And it just is going in a hedge here, and I'm going to spalliate it into one kind of nice line that doesn't take up too much space. So here, another great example. We have ornamental costus in the ginger family on the top with the red, next to some lavenders. So then here is a little bit of a raised vegetable bed, right, sort of in the midst of everything. We've got some kale. We have some, I'm drawing a blank, I'll think of it in a second, but some sweet potatoes there. And that is thyme and oregano and sage. It is the plant. I'm drawing a blank on what that is, but this is another kale plant. So I put kale in between areas. So there's kale in the beds there, and there's also kale along the borders. And then this gorgeous little area are coffee plants. So there's 3 coffee plants. And I'm going to attempt to show, but it was flowering, and it's already, these small plants are already producing little coffee cherries. So that right there out of focus is some coffee, some actual coffee, which in a couple of months I will pluck off and make myself a 1/10 of a cup of coffee. But in a few years, it should produce some really nice coffee for me. So along this right here is a border of grass, and this is lemongrass. So it's serving a purpose, serving a couple of purposes. It's a useful edible, come out and pull the lemongrass, but it's also detracts insects from going in the house. This is the back lanai. But on the right-hand side here are hibiscus, ornamental, beautiful. We love hibiscus. And there's a border in front of that that's really like more of a raised bed. And at this point, that has some vegetables growing in it. So it's got more collards. So that little green plant right there is a collard. It'll grow up like the other one and produce a lot of nice food. Another collard, and then a Swiss chard right there. That's a Swiss chard. And so little intermixed within the ornamentals, we have beautiful, useful edible plants which don't take up any space or do anything. Along there's a bunch of palm trees and a bunch more. There's like hibiscus, but this is habanero. So habanero and a bell pepper right to the right of it in the midst of that, which is just, they're nice to look at and produce some nice food as well. And then this border here, we've got some more basil. Right behind that in the pot is dragon fruit. And so this basil is still producing a ton of food for us. It's as much as really as we need. This tomato actually is the same plant as in the back, but this is what it looks like when it's actually pruned properly. So it produces a lot of fruit. These tomatoes are absolutely fantastic. And I've just been pruning this one a little bit more properly to show kind of the difference. But this row here is sort of a perfect row. So we have eggplant planted, but on the right here, this is an ornamental ginger. It's a shell ginger, and then we've got another tomato. So there's a bunch of shell gingers planted in this row, and intermixed we have tomatoes and eggplants, and all these tomatoes and eggplants have produced a ton of fruit. So the purpose of this video was just to start off to show kind of ornamental growing of stuff that you like, that you really enjoy, but you can also put in a lot of food in there. So I hope that this inspires some people out there that are maybe at home right now to do something sort of fulfilling for themselves. And so I just want to leave this with kind of a quick shot of this is the absolutely beautiful Swiss Chard. It's a rainbow colored Swiss Chard. I think it came from Baker Creek Seeds, which I recommend their videos and their seeds. And then along with that, then next to this is a heliconia, which is an ornamental plant, but absolutely gorgeous. There's no reason the two can't exist side by side. The one thing I didn't mention, which I'll talk about in other videos, is all of this stuff, absolutely everything, can be grown fully organically, which we do using 100% organic food and fertilizer and pesticide type of pest management. So if you're going to grow ornamentals or edibles with your ornamentals, you have to be real careful. So hope you enjoy. I'm going to start doing a lot more videos in this sort of genre, assuming that there's some appetite for them. But I have quite a few plants growing, quite a few projects. So hope you enjoy, and everybody stay safe and happy.